I got into doing what I do. And if you don't know my background, well, you're going to find out now. But I actually developed an eating disorder at 20 years old. I had been so crippled by this beauty standard that I believed I had to weigh as little as possible for people to like me, for men to like me. I got down to 45 kilos, and at 5'6", it's definitely not favourable for health. Hello and welcome to another vlog on YouTube and podcast on Spotify by the Fit Minds podcast. Coach Mariah here. Let's discuss the unrealistic beauty standards we face today, both as men and women. Coming from somebody who literally makes a living helping men and women feel and look their best, to find their confidence, to feel comfortable in their own skin, to enrich their health and their well-being through daily nutrition and exercise. However, it must be addressed that the unrealistic standard upheld for beauty and aesthetics is somewhat of a farce. I've been at the forefront of coaching individuals into transformation journeys of their body and mind for the last 6 to 7 years. And a lot of the time I find in the beginning there is a strong fixation on picking themselves apart, fixing, and even completely distorting their own natural genetics, inclusive of stringent numerical weight and dress size goals. Along with severe self-esteem issues and an overall theme of self-consciousness about flaws such as stretch marks, loose skin, cellulite, and even hip dips. And I will rename these as perceived flaws. They're not factual flaws, but perceived flaws, usually due to societal pressure. This podcast is in no way designed to call out my clients and those I've worked with over the years for the self-image related hang-ups that bear a heavy load on their mental health daily, but rather to support them and others in the journey to finding happiness in beauty the way that they are, and also still having goals, still having a goal to have change and make change in your life, but not necessarily basing it on the modern standard of beauty that we think that we have to uphold. It's more so to address the need to shift away from a fixation and a fascination with concealing our so-called flaws, or forcing our bodies to look and feel picture perfect in a bid to find eternal happiness. This is not just an issue that I've seen in my own circle and client coaching base, but an ever-growing problem which is bubbling beneath the surface of a sleeping volcano, inevitably on the verge of eruption. The likes of social media has somewhat fed into and exacerbated an issue which became far more prevalent since the dawn of modern media. Don't get me wrong, beauty standards date back literally thousands of years with ever-changing markers and measurements to go by. And in fact, the shift to a slim waistline and acne-free, stretch mark-free, cellulite-free, scar-free bodice has only really been perpetuated in the last 100 years. If you think about how long human beings have walked the earth and then how old the earth is itself, this beauty standard is rather fresh in the big scheme of things. Prior to this, it could actually have been considered fashionable, right, to have a curvier waistline and larger hips. And sometimes in history, you'd be considered to be privileged or of royalty if you were well-fed with plenty of fat stores. So where did we get so lost in the process, and why are we constantly chasing a seemingly unattainable standard, which in reality is simply fabricated by society itself? Since I was a little girl, and I think you could probably relate, I have memories of seeing hip bones and flat tummies in the 90s and the 2000s and believing that that was what I needed to display to be seen as beautiful and accepted by others. I was heavily bullied as a child, and you probably think, oh yeah, sure, Mariah, like I don't believe you. But I didn't really have a lot of friends in primary school. I wasn't liked. I was probably one of the more intelligent kids, and I got bullied for that. And I also had a condition of my teeth that basically meant that all of my baby teeth rotted away. So by the time I got into school, every time I smiled, you really couldn't see any of my proper teeth. It was just all these brown pegs. I also grew up in a family that wasn't privileged at all financially, and so I never had new clothes, I never had new shoes, And my lunchbox was pretty simple. It was just getting by that was the focus for us growing up. So I had a life where, and even the primary school I went to, and I went to Rosedale State School. This is a very small primary school, actually west of Bundaberg in Queensland. So it's like the smallest of small country schools. Our uniforms were brown because the water was brown in the town. And so it was just easier to have brown uniforms to prevent them from staining. Crazy. So I grew up in this really small town. And even prior to that, my experience of my childhood was that everyone else had more than me and was prettier than me. And I definitely was not a popular kid at all. It only really changed for me as I went through high school and kind of blossomed a little bit around year 10, I'm going to say. So the last few years of my journey in school were somewhat pleasant, but then I was still facing and even trying to meet up to or even uphold this beauty standard. That's literally how I ended up getting more friends, is because I changed the way that I looked. And to me, this is really sad that this is the extent I had to go to from being a little girl who was very switched on, very gifted. I had an academic scholarship to go to a private school, so my parents could afford that education for me. And I really was somebody who was so academically driven, but I became hyperfixated on my looks and appearance because I believed that that was the way to get ahead in life. And I realized that it could get you very far if you looked a certain way. So, seeing that standard, even from a young age, and just thinking now it's still quite prevalent. I remember seeing dozens of different types of diets taken on by celebrities on the covers of magazines, because back then we didn't have social media. Like, we really didn't have social media. It was magazines, it was CD covers, it was, no, I'm showing my age. It was DVDs when they came about, but it was movies. It was a representation of the modern female, and it was always a woman who was slim with a really big bust, and she had to act a certain way as well. And I'm sure that men had their own pressures, in this time, but I didn't grow up as a male. So this is speaking specifically from a young female standpoint. And then, I saw these magazines as my mother lined up to pay for groceries, right? It was in my face everywhere I went from a very young age. And it still is. It's still in the faces of our children. To think that was what it was like when I grew up 20-something years ago. I'm now 30 and I realize that the problem has in no way disappeared or improved. Rather, it has been amplified and has gone far beyond what I believe to be healthy or manageable for men and women. The likes of an airbrush and editing tools can be used at the click of a button and access at the fingertips of a social media influencer, okay? It is just so easy to edit. I don't edit my videos, so if I ever have food on my mouth or my hair looks a bit fluffy, it's because it is. I'm so not even worried or bothered by it, but the sad part of it is that we actually reward this type of behavior with a double tap and a comment or an affirmation when we see what we have continued to encourage and uphold as the beauty standard set for not just ourselves, but also our children, right? And I'm calling myself out for this too, because I used to be that person who was just, I would kind of almost like look for those people on social media and, oh wow, like she looks amazing, and don't get me wrong, my job is improving people's aesthetics, but also part of that is improving people's self-esteem. And a lot of what I do is actually improving the conversation that my clients are having with themselves, because even when they achieve the results that they want to, somehow they're still not quite happy. And this is where a big problem lies, this comparison to the overall beauty standard, not even just an individual person, but an average across the board, which isn't actually the real average. You might think this is fairly hypocritical coming from somebody who posts photos of themselves online, who works on their physique and portrays the lifestyle of a health and fitness coach. I got into doing what I do. And if you don't know my background, well, you're going to find out now. But, I actually developed an eating disorder at 20 years old. I had been so crippled by this beauty standard that I believed I had to weigh as little as possible for people to like me, for men to like me. I got down to 45 kilos, and at 5'6", it's definitely not favorable for health. I felt my tailbone, rubbing on seats when I sat down. I looked a lot older than I was, and I was absolutely miserable. Probably about a size 6. Sometimes I had to shop in the kids section, and I was diagnosed with anorexia and bulimia nervosa. I had to go through a 3-year intensive recovery process to get past that. I hate talking about weight, but I like talking about it because at the same time it represents a big change and shift towards something far more positive. I think I'm about 73 kilos, I think, at the moment. I'm pregnant as well, so I'm not actually that conscious of my weight because that's just a part of being pregnant. You do have some of those side effects of fluid retention and that kind of thing. One of the bonuses is that your bust grows, but I mean, even that can be a bit painful. But I've lived in the shoes of somebody who was hyper fixated on being as thin as possible and weighing as little as possible. I now live a very happy lifestyle. I'm more than happy to have, the flaws that I have. And in fact, I'm happy to not even hide them anymore. So, I guess coming from someone who has been at the polar opposite end of the scale of actually experiencing what this can do to somebody, being so obsessed with, weight loss and being as aesthetically pleasing as possible, it's not hypocritical at all, because here I am actually trying to make a difference in people's lives to get them to a point where they're not going in that direction. Sure that they can come away from something that, might be detrimental towards their health in the other direction, but actually finding this happy medium in the middle that works for them. I will touch on, vouch for the fact, right? I do have stretch marks. I am happy to send you pictures of them, not just a little bit. I have a lot. My partner loves them. I've got them all down my hips. I've got them all across my thighs, all across. They actually cover my butt altogether. They're very obvious. I have these really interesting ones that I love them. They go from, the mid part of my hip down to the mid of my thigh. And I don't know where they came from, but they came about probably in my teens. I was so self-conscious of them. And I think the stretch marks was the thing that was easiest for me to get over and get past because I've had them for so long. And I've got cellulite on my butt. I have lots of cellulite on my bum, right? In certain pairs of pants, you can just see it's just covered in it. It's not a problem for me. I've got it on the backs of my thighs, so just below the base of my thighs, the insides of my legs, just like everybody else does, okay? I also have, and this is something I don't often talk about, but some self-harm scars from when I was much younger on my leg, which I used to hide in any way that I could, and still to this day, I hate talking about them. I do talk about them, but just not often because I don't necessarily want, I guess to go down that path, and it was a very long time ago, and there's still such a taboo about in relation to self-harm, but now I just wear them and I tell the truth when asked about them. I don't edit them out of photos. I used to wear shorts when I was younger to hide them all the time, and now I just realize it's a part of my body and it's not something that I should be ashamed of. I get bloated, okay? Very bloated. Obviously I'm pregnant at the moment, but I've got a condition called adenomyosis, right? So my tummy is not always flat. I get bloated. I get so bloated that I actually do look more pregnant than I actually am. Even when I wasn't pregnant, I break out on my face. I get really bad breakouts. It doesn't look like it right now. It's pretty good. But when it's really bad, I have to wear really heavy makeup to hide it. So I break out all along my jaw. I break out on my chest as well from training at the gym and getting a bit sweaty. I have messy hair days. I have days when I honestly just won't participate and it's just a big ball of fluff. I refuse to use facial contour when doing my makeup. Okay, I used to be really worried about how broad my nose was. I just literally use bronzer and powder. I've got just powder and bronzer on today, but I won't go the whole hog and, get all technical with it. I haven't had filler done in my face in years. And that's an honest truth. I haven't touched it in years because I wanted to stop feeding into this. I wanted to stop feeding into the monster that meant that I had to look or be a certain way. And I want to be transparent with people. I want people to understand that there are parts of me I don't particularly like, but I also have to challenge that as well. For example, my arms, I don't like how on the side they look quite thick because I've got a bit of muscle. So in some photos, I'm like, oh, how do I hide those big whoppers, you know? And now, I think as the years have gone on, I've actually started to celebrate them a little bit more and be proud of them. You know, I've built them, I've worked hard for them, and that's also my genetic structure, and I shouldn't try to hide or change that. I make no attempt to edit or fix my photos or videos because I believe that just feeds into the issue at hand. I would rather reflect a version of myself that is as transparent as possible and realistic at the same time. And the reason why I'm addressing all of this is because I believe that it comes down to a couple of reasons as to how we change the path moving forward, how we change the way that we see ourselves. There are two responsibilities in play here. And one of the people involved is the people who are putting out the imagery, who are putting out the messages of what their bodies look like, or what they look like, or whether they have flaws, or whether, not even flaws, but whether they have parts of their body that literally everybody has, okay? So it's the responsibility of those who are in the public eye, and even in mentorship roles as well, you know, in coaching roles, all that type of stuff. And it's also the responsibility of ourselves. And I'll talk about that a little bit about that later. But I'm talking about what I'm trying to do to contribute towards the success of this changing. I even stopped wearing fake tan, okay? I'm not wearing any at the moment. I just refuse to do it. For anything other than a promo photo shoot of recent, because sometimes I do look a little bit too pale in comparison to the ones next to me. Because I was sick of trying to look like somebody I'm not. I was sick of trying to meet the standard. I was sick of trying to be this woman that was a version of me that I couldn't be. I couldn't be comfortably. I couldn't be her and then be myself at the same time. And I think there are probably people who relate to this going, yeah, like the amount of times I've squished myself into shapewear, or I've done this or I've done that just because I felt like I had to. You know, and also too, like, the version of myself that I really dislike, other people may really admire. And that's one thing I had to come to terms with over time, was that if we become so hypercritical of the way that we look, we don't actually understand and see ourselves the way that we actually are, in a very positive light, the way that other people see us, the wonderful things about us. And I wanted to start encouraging, you know, the polar opposite beauty standard on my social media platforms. Yes, I prep athletes into competitions. Yes, they get lean, but at the same time, I'm still celebrating my own body through my own journey that isn't when I'm conditioned, right? I will still post pictures of myself when I don't have abs. I will still engage. I'll still do a vlog. I'm still doing a vlog when I'm at my heaviest weight I've ever been in my life. I will not shy away from this. I don't want to feed into this problem. I don't want to have this really stringent, strict beauty standard as the set bar for where everybody has to be. Otherwise, they're not beautiful. Otherwise, they're not where they need to be as well. I've never put pressure on anybody to ever get there either, you know. And I often have those discussions with clients too. What's your motivation for wanting to get those, you know, goals? Why do you want to be there? I always talk to them about it before they do it. And sometimes I even try to talk them out of the extremes that they want to go to with their physique, because sometimes it's just, and in fact, most of the time it's just not necessary. And often it is temporary. If you want to get somewhere physically and aesthetically that is quite conditioned, it is always going to be temporary. I wanted to obviously start to shift the subsequent influence from the messages I'm sending out that I may have on others to feel that they had to do the same, okay? So often, you know, sometimes I'll even do before and afters of women who have, you know, put on muscle and weight on purpose, and it's a very positive thing. It's not always about weight loss. So this vlog and podcast is in no way an endeavor to quash the goals of men and women to look and feel more confident in their own skin, right? So by the same token, right, this is not me saying, or virtue signaling and saying, hey, you know, this means you need to drop your goals altogether and have no fat loss goal and just, you know, be happy with how you are. And no. It's about balance. It's about finding that middle ground. And I think what I'm trying to get at in this podcast is not chasing what you believe to be your ideal physique based on what other people are showing you and what you're seeing in society, and perhaps maybe finding a version of you that you're happy with that doesn't have an influence from that. It's really hard to do. And the solution doesn't just start with me. Like, I would be deluded to think that one person, such as myself, could change the way that society as a whole functions and prospers, because let's be honest, there are billions of people on this earth, and, I can't just make a difference on my own. Sure, maybe anyone listening to this podcast might think differently about themselves afterwards, but it's not going to make a dent in, the way that society currently functions. I would rather just address the extremities of the issue at hand, okay? And perhaps try to find a balance, as I said, somewhere in the middle where we can embrace our bodies and our minds in all of our individual uniqueness. Of course, it is okay to want to make improvements, especially in relation to your overall health and well-being and self-confidence. It's okay. It's okay to have goals. It's okay to say, look, I get what you're saying, coach, but maybe I just don't feel comfortable right now. Maybe it's not even about numbers or kilos, but I want to feel like I can be a bit more confident on a day-to-day basis. And that's okay. It's okay to have those types of goals, because you're not necessarily trying to match or meet up to a particular beauty standard. You just want to feel more comfortable with yourself. But we must ask ourselves whether our confidence, okay, this is an interesting one, is based on the idea of a societally fabricated aesthetic appeal rather than what we actually want and need for our inner peace, physical confidence, and life balance, okay? Is this expectation that you've set for yourself, and this is part of where I managed to recover from anorexia, was I was getting thinner and thinner because part of it was controlling my life and having some aspect of control, but a lot of it was because I thought that's what I had to be attractive, okay? And to be impressive, and for people to like me, to be admired, all that type of stuff. Now, I've realized it's vastly different. You can still be liked. You can still be attractive. In fact, you can be as attractive as you like, no matter what type of shape you have. But self-confidence is absolutely a choice. It always has been for everybody. But self-confidence should never be based on a societal, fabricated aesthetic appeal. It's never about what everyone else says, or even a handful of people say or do. It's more about you and what you actually want for you. I'm a massive advocate for implementing sustainable changes into a person's life. And I pay highlight to the word sustainable, whereby they can look and feel their best, okay, their version of their best, without putting unnecessary pressures on themselves to live up to a particular standard and going to ridiculous extents to get there, and then having to maintain those ridiculous extents and methods to stay there. Such as developing, these dreams of developing abdominal definition, weighing as little as possible, or completely ridding themselves of cellulite, eradicating acne, or even using expensive creams in hopes of reducing the appearance of stretch marks. Even when I'm preparing athletes for a competition prep, I am always very wary to protect and pretense their journey with the idea that the extreme conditioning that they're going to achieve will be incredibly temporary, okay? It's a temporary position and accomplishment. Part of the reason I wanted to get involved in comp prep is because I wanted to be a part of the change of getting people to understand in that moment in time that it's for a specific amount of time, and it should never be sustained beyond that point, especially not that level of conditioning. And if you've ever competed before, you'll understand that you felt awful. It's an awful feeling being that lean, and that it's just not a lifestyle. Being in that conditioned state is not a lifestyle. Certainly being a bodybuilder, you can be a bodybuilder and that can be a lifestyle and absolutely a hobby, but there are different parts of this journey which actually see that you are in a higher body fat percentage for larger portions of a period of time, and you need to be okay with that because it aligns with your health markers. And health, weirdly enough, amongst all of this, we become so tied up in the way that we look that we've actually lost sight of our health altogether sometimes. It's not a healthy way to live, nor is it something that you can or should sustain long term. And if you do try to do this, I can guarantee that misery is the end result. You will be miserable because you will miss out on so much in your life, and you will forever be so critical of yourself. So, one of the major reasons I became a comp prep coach is because I wanted to be a voice of reason in a sea of misunderstanding around physique contest preparation athletes. You know, I noticed a frightening trend in missing menstrual cycles, eating disorders, and body dysmorphia amongst the bodybuilding community. It's still prevalent. I wanted to be able to reverse clients safely out of shows and encourage the idea that sustaining a little bit more body fat, as I said before, and a healthier endocrine system, so your hormonal function, was the everyday goal, okay? And finding balance for social events and improving their relationship with food and their body image was the key in this process. That their off-season bod was in fact their everyday bod, and that is completely okay. I've learned to love the body that I'm in when I'm not in stage prep, right? And weirdly enough, I get to a certain stage in my preps when I am competing where I actually really I wouldn't say don't like the way I look, but I'm starting to get a bit uncomfortable. And it's weird because it's like, oh, how do you get uncomfortable being that lean? Because you get weird looks when you go out in public without a shirt on, without a long sleeve shirt on. You get really cold all the time. You look older, you do, it ages your skin. You get a comp prep face where it's really gaunt, you look sick. Don't get me wrong, this is comp prep, this is part of this sport, but I don't necessarily look forward to being super conditioned in prep because yes, it's good for the stage, it's good for the competition, but it's not necessarily an everyday physique that I like to walk around in. And teamed with that, my energy is crap as well. So it's like, and this would work not just for comp prep, this is going to work for everyday people wanting to get to that conditioned state. It's going to pair with low energy levels as well. So, you can guarantee the women walking around stick thin, size 6 to 8 and purposefully trying to sustain this are not happy. They're not. It's interesting. We chase this look for happiness and we end up miserable anyway. So, coming from someone who I competed 7 years into my training journey and only after recovering from an eating disorder 4 years prior, okay, so I had only just, recovered from an eating disorder, but it had been 4 years since I'd fully recovered. It occurred to me that the toxic relationship and obsession with a conditioned and lean physique wasn't just an issue in the competition prep world, but also an issue we faced with general population. You only need to take a look at some of the major fitness influencers on social media, in the social media space, and even models, actors, I'll include those because I would liken them to being very similar, to see that this is still just as much of a prevalent issue as it always has been. I mean, you look at Selena Gomez, for example, a perfectly healthy woman who's come under fire for being more curvy than usual, and I think she looks incredible. I think she's who she wants to be, and I don't understand why it has to be such a focal point. In that there are very few accounts, right? Social media accounts, which have a substantial following promoting health, body positivity, and life balance. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that those, and including myself, I'd like to include myself because yes, I get conditioned when I prep, but then also I'd spend most of my time not there. Why do those people, why don't they have millions of followers? Sure, there might be a couple of token ones out there that have made it big because they've repeated themselves over and over again loudly enough for people to hear, but why are we not endorsing this? Why are we not endorsing a message that allows for balance, that allows for temporary positions in conditioned states and spending more time in a position of health and well-being? Why is it such a problem to allow that and to actually fall into that and be more comfortable with that and be happier with that? There are, however, a multitude of personas. I see them every day, adorned with shredded abs, lines all over their body, and next to no flaws in their skin quality. And they're sustaining it, it's sustained. They're not letting go of this stuff, right? They're not letting go of this incredibly conditioned state. You wouldn't catch them eating popcorn at the movies, or, I ate a whole bucket of popcorn a couple of weeks ago. I blame the pregnancy cravings. But they're not real people, right? It's like they would never admit to, let alone see themselves, dead doing something like that. It's rubbed in our faces on a daily basis, smiles to match, an illusion that this ideal body type comes with promises of eternal happiness and admiration from the public eye. So it's like, we're not only endorsing these people, but then we also perceive them to be incredibly popular and loved because they're getting all these likes and all these comments and attention. And we're feeding into that. So then we're like, oh, I'll get all of that attention if I behave that way, or if I depict myself in that way. And that's literally how this cycle repeats itself. It's how it's perpetuated. It's interesting, isn't it? Coming from someone who's been as lean and as thin as I could physically get, the happiness trap only saw me more miserable, self-critical, fearful, isolated, and severely restricted than ever before, okay? I don't miss that person. I really don't. I don't miss that person. I had no personality. I had no energy. I felt like shit all the time. And I look back at photographs now and I think, holy crap, like I thought I was doing the right thing. And all I was doing was chasing a standard that wasn't attainable or sustainable. Each to their own, however, okay? It's not illegal to walk around like a Greek god or goddess. I'm not trying to hate on those who are just naturally well proportioned. And jealousy and bitterness breeds self-hatred in its own right. So I'm not here to be a jealous monster, okay? I actually think people who do this, who sustain, these killer physiques and let's say all their blood markers are fantastic and they are genuinely, genuinely happy, enjoying life, still eating birthday cake and, foods they like to every now and then, go them, like hell yeah. But this alluring trap, right? This alluring happiness trap feeds the body dysmorphia monster, the self-comparison monster, the I'm not good enough and I need to do better monster within all of us. I've been there myself, okay? I was always wary of mentioning how temporary the goal was though when I prepped. And it was years between, like I compete every 2.5, 3 years and probably won't be competing for a while now. And I'm okay with that. I'm always very wary of telling people and being so transparent about it that it feels awful to be in that position physically and mentally. And it's something that's done for a specific sport and purpose, but not necessarily because I believe that is the most attractive state that I can exist in. Definitely not. Definitely not. I do clap for those who found their own version of success, right? Okay, I do, honestly. As long as I see it as a genuine approach and their transparency is paired with the image that they portray. And that sustaining this extreme conditioning, okay, like really extreme conditioning for majority of the population isn't encouraged or condoned. Even so, if it is picture perfect on socials and seems too good to be true, it probably is. Editing, lighting, makeup, and tricks of the trade. Okay? I learned something recently which, oh my God, blew my mind. So I've been looking at a lot of maternity clothes. Heaven forbid, Jesus. Scary shit. Why are they so ugly? I don't mean as in like they're ugly as in, I'm sorry to say that, but I'm like, man, come on, there's got to be better options out there. And I have found some, so thank God. But there are a lot of really, oh my God, very unfun maternity clothes. So I guess that's just how it is. But, I actually discovered the other day that a lot of women who are doing shoots in maternity clothes aren't actually pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, no wonder they look immaculate, because they've had like a, what are they called? Like a I don't know, a squishy, spongy, added belly on that isn't, they're not pregnant. They're not pregnant. I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest lie. I've always thought this whole time that pregnant women in maternity clothes were actually pregnant, but they're not. So it's wild, right? So, there's so many things involved in modeling and for fitfluencers. You think they got this big, of course they're going to figure out what their best angles are and the best lighting is and all of the above. Alongside the pressure, the extreme pressure that some fitfluencers place on themselves, and I call them fitfluencers because they are, to maintain a not so sustainable physique and portraying body standards to a broader audience, which may be causing more harm than good for themselves and their followers alike, okay? So it's hard. It's a really fine line between inspiring and motivating and possibly just constantly bringing people down around you because they don't look like you or they don't look like that particular beauty standard, right? We all know that fitfluencer. I can think of one myself. Kudos to her, who's maintained a 6-pack, maybe an 8-pack, and remained a size 6 to 8 for years on end without batting a fake eyelash. And all while promoting her newest supplement or clothing line, sucking us into buying into the dream. Okay? We've all been there, right? I mean, I years ago, this is a long time ago though, I don't do it anymore, but years ago I followed particular fitness influencers who, thank God, now have had kids. They've come out the other side. They're very transparent with their stretch marks and everything like that. Their loose skin. It's actually quite nice. But prior to that, it was all about how lean and shredded and hot they looked, like 100% of the time, all the time. And they were selling things. They were selling products that I wanted to buy. I wanted to be like them. And I want to talk about this because this is where the heart of my work is, okay? What about the average mama? Just wanting to feel comfy in her gym gear enough to be able to train in the weight section with confidence. Okay, what about the average young man just wanting to gain some strength and hold his head high after his workouts? What about the women going through menopause, simply wanting to feel themselves again and reduce the hormonal symptoms, trying to sustain her career and her family life? What about the average bloke trying to get his fitness up so he can prevent the risk of metabolic disease and run around with his kids or grandkids? And these are real people. These are people that I work with. These are people that have goals and aspirations that go far beyond something as surface level as hip dips. And don't get me wrong, again, we all have different goals and aspirations. We all have different wants and needs for ourselves. But when we lose sight of the bigger picture, that's where this becomes a real problem. What's actually important in life? What about the average woman simply wanting to start to love who she sees in the mirror again? And usually, these same people are pressured by the tainted influence of a starved and depleted fitness influencer who never seems to have a bad hair day, okay, or a bad body day, because who wants to see that, right? It all starts with what we expose ourselves to daily, what we choose to consume and what we choose to distance ourselves from, and the transparency social media influencers and even coaches present to the public. So as I said, there are two people, just two, involved in this. Crazy, right? It's those who are consuming and those who are producing the content, or certainly those who are exacerbating the issue. And most of those people who are exacerbating the issue won't actually realize they're contributing towards it at all. They're not going to be doing vlogs and podcasts about beauty standards. They might occasionally put out maybe a reel or a photo every now and then about preaching about how they love their bodies, but they still look picture perfect anyway. And sometimes, you might even accuse me of this, like, oh, Mariah, you look fabulous. Or just like, hold on, wait a second. I'm 30 kilos heavier than I was at my skinniest. Hate that word, skinniest, lightest, 30 kilos heavier, okay? This version of me is the comfy, happy, I've got fat on my hips, all right? If you're watching the vlog, I've got some here, I can grab it, I'm cool with it, I like it, okay? I've got heaps of chonk on my bum and I love it, I love it. I love this part of my body, I really do. And I'm not just saying that to virtue signal. I'm saying that because I fucking do. I really love my body the way that it is. I really do. So this is not me trying to preach, because I'm sure there are people, absolutely, there are people who look at my life, my body, and go, oh, you can't talk. I can. I've recovered. I have been at death's door trying to chase this shit. I found happiness. I found health. I found balance. Okay. I eat chocolate every day. I like chocolate. And we must choose, obviously, to endorse the persona that we support and trust, okay? If you're sick of seeing the shit, stop following it, right? Stop endorsing it. Rather than the one that we, only continuously seem to, right? So it's endorse the persona you trust, rather than the one that you only continuously seems to make you feel like absolute shit about yourself. Okay, we've all got that person. I've had to unfollow a couple lately, and it's just because it no longer aligns with where I am in my life anymore. It's all they put out. And I would like to have people on my feed that nourish and nurture a part of me that is healthy and happy and doesn't need to have that type of aesthetic goal, constantly there on show. Because reality is, the 1% of the population who might portray the perfect body, hair, and skin type, 1%, probably even less, I'm going to be honest. It's not even a real statistic, but it's not a lot of people, does not portray, represent, or even advocate for the majority of the population and what is actually necessary for finding one's individual health, happiness, and continuity in life. On another note, we must start to reflect upon ourselves in a way where we can consider our own goals and wishes completely separate of any external influence. Which is much easier said than done, as I said previously. How do we establish what our goals are for ourselves, might be, how do we figure that out without wanting to look like something we aren't? How do we do that? And the answer lies in the question. We must aim to improve ourselves as a version of ourselves that currently exists. Okay? Not as a version of somebody else's shape or type. Not of something that we are not. Now it's clicking. We need to stop trying to look like someone else or many people that we quite literally are not. Okay? Don't try to look like me. You're not me. Okay? If you want to look like me, you have to have the big old, dump truck as well. And it's not super perky. It's got a ton of cellulite and stretch marks. So if you would like some of that, I'm happy to give it to you, but it's not physically possible. If you want to look like other people, you also have to have every component of their life that they might have, which is some of their suffering as well, So this direct comparison stuff and the beauty standard of other people, it's like you're only comparing to what they physically look like. You're not even starting with what's happening beneath the surface. Do you want that as well? You don't even know the full story. It also begins with plenty of acceptance of the very normal parts of the human body, your natural shape. You might have an hourglass figure. I've got, weirdly enough, no hips. I know it sounds odd, but I've got hips, but as in I don't have wide hips, and I've always been very self-conscious of how narrow they are. Sounds weird. And people think, that's not something to be self-conscious of. Well, everybody gets self-conscious of something, right? And again, my arms that are a little bit wider than the average females, right? And you can pick yourself, you can find every bloody thing about yourself that you don't like. I don't like how big my traps are sometimes. They kind of get a bit over-dominant. I could go on for days about it. But we have to accept your bone structure, the way your rib cage sits, how big your boobies are, unless you want to get them adjusted, it's totally up to you. Your overall structure, the size of your hands, the size of your feet. I used to be self-conscious of the size of my hands because they're quite big for a girl, and my feet, mind you. Your ears, your nose, your chin, your jawline, this constant head-butting the wall over the way that you just are naturally, a lot of your very natural components, is only going to see you miserable. Okay, not actually finding the good parts of you and focusing on those things. Instead of seeing these attributes as flaws, perhaps we can see them as a part of ourselves. Simply a part of who we are and what we are and where we are right now at this point in our lives. Yeah? This includes accepting the fact that there is no cream that is going to reduce the appearance of your stretch marks, at least not dramatically, and over time they will fade. Okay, they do. And you place more importance on them, okay, than anyone else ever will. You're the person who is the most worried about your stretch marks. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay? Everyone else knows they're normal. Everyone does. Everyone knows stretch marks are normal. We learn about it at some point in our lives. This includes accepting the fact as well, right, that stretch marks aren't that bad. What is so bad about stretch marks? They are lines that tell the stories of our lives, our genetics, right? So obviously how we've grown, the food we've enjoyed, the growth that we've been through, the life changes, okay? Perhaps even the babies we've birthed. Who knows? If you start to show confidence with your stretch marks, perhaps others will follow suit. Or you may even relieve someone of the pressure they've placed on themselves. It was really nice to see that when I started posting photos, and I've always done it, but as in I started posting more photos that were more highlighted of my stretch marks, that you could very, very visibly see them. The feedback was really positive and lovely and kind and wonderful. And I wasn't even really fussed about that. It was just probably more a case of oh, wow, I didn't realize that doing this actually relieves other people of the pressures they put on themselves and gives them an ability to see themselves as human beings who, you know, also have very normal stretch marks, and it's okay. It's beautiful, if anything. I think they're really beautiful. Cellulite, okay? We all of us have cellulite. I'm sure some blokes might not, but women, especially women, it's a part of life, at least for anyone over the age of 20. I'm so sorry. There was a stage probably when I'm going to say probably like 11 or 12, maybe 10, where I didn't have cellulite. It definitely came on after that. But you know, you often see young women and you go, shit, how come they don't have cellulite? Like they'll get it. They will. And it's, you know, we don't ruin their fun. They're having a great time. But either way, if your efforts to reduce your cellulite down to next to nothing are making you incredibly miserable, maybe think about why you're so bothered by it and who you're even doing it for. If we all know cellulite's normal, who the fuck are you trying to lose your cellulite for? And if you say it's for yourself, you probably need to address that, right? Work on that. Work on the idea that where did this become a thing? Where did you get so fixated on this? You read somewhere in a magazine that it looks ugly, okay? Probably when you were all of 10 to 12 years old, and it stuck with you. But what if I told you the person who was writing the article, okay, had cellulite themselves? It's like this big aha moment, like, holy shit, my whole life it's been a lie. You know, cellulite isn't ugly, it's just literally a part of a woman's body, or a maturing woman's body. What if I told you that plenty of women wear shorts to the gym and are unfazed by the appearance of those little dimples in the backs of their legs, or big dimples, including myself, okay? I see them in the mirror. I don't try and cover them up or hide them. They're there. So be it. There is also freedom in letting go of the beauty standard that you've set for yourself, because I can guarantee almost every single person in that gym knows it's a normal part of a woman's body. Yep. So again, ask yourself, why is this such a problem? And that only supermodels won't have cellulite, okay? And even then, that's their full-time job, okay? I'm sure they get sick of not being able to have an ice cream every Sunday just to keep their butt cheeks perfectly sculpted. Ice cream wins every damn time. I'd rather have ice cream and cellulite than never eat ice cream ever again. Sorry, but that's my honest opinion. And even then, modelling is now slowly but surely depicting and representing women shifting over time with jiggly butts and bits. Hallelujah. We have an accurate, or at least a more accurate representation of what women actually look like. I don't think we're quite there yet, because I do think a lot of it is virtue signaling. Like there's a lot of, you know, you'll see a lot of women in the industry where they're, or models in the industry where they take really extreme physiques. So they have like a very, very slim girl and quite a curvy girl. It's like, no, there are in-betweeners as well. Like we exist, you know, there are people there that exist that are in between. So I think it's about representing a very broad spectrum of body types and skin tones, you know, not just being tanned, but also having the pale pasties like me. And I don't know, just having, I guess, less of a focus on the fact that we're, you know, being, I don't know, righteous by doing this. And it's not even about being righteous. It is what it is. These are everyday fucking women and men. Can't leave men out of the situation. I hope that there are changes in the male modelling industry. I don't think there are as dramatic, but there really should be. Also understanding that if you've gained an amount of body fat on the other end of the scale, if you've gained an amount of body fat that has put your health at risk, it's not permanent, okay? So I've talked this whole way about body positivity and accepting yourself the way that you are and all of the above. There are going to be certain instances where your body fat is increased to the point where it's influencing maybe a chronic disease like PCOS, or, you know, you're having some troubles, right? Maybe you're pre-diabetic, like this is where stuff starts to get a bit risky, okay? But I need you to understand that no matter where you've got yourself with your body fat levels, it's not permanent. It's not permanent, okay? And I think a lot of people get to that point where they feel defeated because they get there and they think that they're stuck there, yeah? We shouldn't necessarily be chasing extreme low body fat percentages all year round, or even sometimes at all, okay? So again, I'm trying to find the equilibrium for men and women But in my role, in what I do as a coach, it's actually more about finding the happy place than it is about finding those extremes or chasing those extremes. It is absolutely okay to look at reducing your body fat percentage to a point where your health markers, such as your blood markers, your sleep quality, your risk of chronic illness and disease are improved. It's okay. It's okay to do that. That's why nutritionists exist. That's why trainers exist. We actually, our role, weirdly enough in society, is actually to help people achieve health. Okay. Yes, we might have a focus on aesthetics and body composition, but at the same time, I always look at it this way. It's an added bonus when you get to that point, okay? I actually think that everything else that happens as a result of getting to a healthier state for your body actually transcends into your mind and also into your overall health, okay? And it should. Certainly if you're not taking it to extremes of, and we're going to say like sub 20% body fat for women, where it starts to get, we've gone a bit too far. And also even, getting there is fine. It's just sustaining it that's a problem. But, okay, if you keep grabbing at your love handles, I don't do that. I mean, if I do it, I'm just putting my hands on my hips. If you keep grabbing at your love handles or staring at your hip dips in the mirror, squishing together your cellulite and squeezing yourself into dresses you're not comfortable in, you are only going to purposefully perpetuate and feed that monster furthermore. Okay? Hip dips are a genetic factor as to where you store your body fat and the shape of your hips. Okay? In fact, I actually think I have hip dips myself. My partner has taken a couple photos from me from behind. And I realized, holy shit, I've got hip dips. I've never even seen myself in that, direction. I never realized what they were until it became such a hot topic. And I still don't care about them. Like, I'm unbothered by the idea of trying to get rid of them. No, that's not a goal for me. Why? Because I spent years repairing the relationship I have with myself and in turn banished some strong insecurities I had hanging over my head. So much so, I'm able to shut them down as quickly as they appear. Okay? So yes, there are times when that little insecurity monster, rears its ugly head again, but it's about changing the conversation with yourself and spotting that as soon as it happens. Sure, with physical endeavors for your aesthetic goals, you can absolutely manipulate your body composition and shape over time. I'm not saying it's not possible. I am not saying, right, that, hold on, you're stuck the way that you are. Some things are stuck the way they are, but some things aren't. So, some things can be changed 100%. But sometimes it can be very helpful to have additional goals that are not related to your aesthetics, okay? So that you don't become hyper-fixated or hyper-focused on these and hypercritical of yourself. Maybe it looks like having some goals in the gym to increase your strength with particular exercises, to increase your steps outside in the sunshine to get back in touch with nature. Maybe it looks like changing your circle a little bit as well, having people around you that aren't so focused on physical aesthetics and maybe they enjoy life just the way it is, and then they're not in that community. Maybe they're a little bit further removed from all of it. To have your bloods performed and look at taking the necessary measures required to improve your health stats. To look at enjoying your exercise and time with loved ones and friends incorporated into your weekly routine. Okay, so balance. Start to enjoy some flexibility at special events while eating mindfully, but never making decisions, and this is really important, never making decisions around food out of a position of deprivation or guilt, okay? Because deprivation can lead to binging, and guilt can then lead to further self-sabotage and in general, just thoughts of self-hatred and none of this is productive or even rewarding for you long-term. Start practicing self-care, okay? Whatever it looks like. I don't give a shit what your self-care looks like. It doesn't have to be journaling, it doesn't have to be the stereotypical stuff. But maybe massage, float tanks, a candlelit bath, or just switching off from technology and socials for 24 hours or longer. If you have followed my podcast for a while, you know that I'm a big believer in getting off social media for a while. And I've got social media. It's probably how you found me. Take yourself on a scheduled holiday where you can walk around naked. Yeah, I just said that. Take yourself on a scheduled holiday, whether you're by yourself or with your partner, could be fun if you're with your partner, where you get to walk around naked where no one can see you, okay? Right? Give yourself, in that, the opportunity to physically be and feel free. Literally anything that isn't firing insults at yourself or doom scrolling on social media or standing in front of the mirror pinching yourself till, you're crying on the floor. Really tuning into your own mind and body awareness, wearing the bikini or swimsuit, just wearing it, just wear it. I don't care what you've got, just wear it. And if you're not comfortable wearing it, just say that's okay. But please don't exit this life without wearing something you've always wanted to wear. Because listen to yourself, you want to wear that. Buying clothes you like and you feel comfortable in. There are certain styles of clothes I won't even touch. I'm like, nah, not touching that, because I know that is just not going to fit my physique properly, and I'm going to be sad because it doesn't fit me. I always go in the direction of going for styles that I know that suit me and that I'm comfortable in. Not aiming to fit a size you've never been, okay? Or even having a size or specific weight goal at all. It's okay to have, I think it's okay to have these goals, but I think you've got to have them in conjunction with other goals, and also think about why you've got that specific size goal. Like why that one, Why is it not just when I feel happy and comfortable in my own skin? Having a goal to establish a healthy relationship with food, instead of swinging back and forth between extreme deprivation and guilt because, of course, you couldn't stick to something that restrictive. Adopting a patient approach to changing your lifestyle to improve more than one facet of your life forever. Not just to get lean for your friend's wedding or your milestone birthday, okay? Focus more on the memories you're creating rather than the photos you're taking. And even then, challenge yourself on why you aren't happy with a photo in the first place. Where did that negative voice originally come from, and why is it still hanging around? You're responsible for it. But to find your constant happy place somewhere in the middle of all of this, you may need to work with someone like a coach who can help to get you there, or even a psychologist if the self-esteem issues are more deep-rooted. Your sweet spot for aesthetics, health, and mental well-being is going to look vastly different to somebody else's, and that's utterly and entirely okay. So please stop comparing yourself to the tiny human being on social media that literally looks like she's wearing kids' clothes, and maybe look at yourself as an entirely separate human being with completely separate goals and a separate lifestyle and, a completely separate set of genetics as well. Some people are genetically lean in certain areas, genetically slim, or gain muscle fairly easily, or don't gain muscle fairly easily. It doesn't mean you need to force your body to reflect their genetic makeup. That's actually impossible. Everything from the facial features down to their bodily bone structure is uniquely their own, and this is much the same for you. You might even be able to set a goal to speak kindly to yourself every day. Maybe it's saying something nice to yourself, looking for wonderful things about you that make you, you. And you can't find, if you can't find any or think of any, it's time to start brainstorming, because I'm sure there are people in your life who value you and appreciate you for who you are, which has absolutely nothing to do with the way that you look. Something that I find to be rather helpful when I become negative about my self-image or self-confidence is listening to things that I'm grateful for, listing things that I'm grateful for in a day. It might be that, I wake up and speak out loud to myself, there are 3 things I'm looking forward to today and 3 things that I like about myself. And at the end of the day, I turn to my partner and I tell him 3 things that I'm grateful for. Crazy, right? It's just such a simple process. Maybe try to alternate them from day to day to remind you that you actually have far more than just your appearance to fixate on. And sometimes it might be appearance. Maybe you might go, I really like my hair, I really like my eyes, I like my eyebrows. There are parts of you that you're not even paying any attention to. And at the end of the day, at the end of the day as well, you can write down these things. So if you're finding it hard not to focus on all of the bad things you can see in yourself, write them down. Write down the good things so that it becomes something that's solidified, because we know that when we write things down, we're far more likely to remember them. You'd be surprised how much you can put on paper or vocalize to your loved ones or yourself when you really put the effort into it. It's easy for us to fixate on things that make us feel bad about ourselves because we have repeatedly conditioned ourselves to do so. But what if we started to change the narrative, okay? What if we started to speak to ourselves differently, and in turn, we were able to influence our children to do something similar? And this is where it's really important. Do you think that their upbringing would look a little bit different to ours? We can't entirely prevent them from being exposed to a heavy fixation on the perfect beauty standard, according to absolutely nobody. But we can change the exposure they have in their direct environment, and it starts with us and the message that we put across. Because children learn and pick up on what we do. They are sponges for daily habits and mirroring our self-talk and our behaviors. And we can start to have those discussions around what is real versus what is not, okay? And if we understand how imperative it is that we educate our future generations, it is just as important to start the practice within ourselves for our own happiness. Happiness within yourself is 100% a decision. I know nobody likes to hear that, right? But it will be a decision that you need to make on a daily basis. You might not be completely satisfied with where you are now, but at the same time, if you don't celebrate some of your small successes, your strengths, and your accomplishments, you're never going to be happy with where you are at any given point in time in life. You will perpetuate your own misery and dissatisfaction. In order to change the way that we feel about ourselves, we have to change the way that we see and speak to ourselves. As we are, right, the ones who truly set the beauty standard. It all starts with you. All right, that's it from me, finishing up right on the hour. Thanks a lot for listening to this podcast. Looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Bye.